Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cost Code Show presented by Notify. This is a podcast where we focus on helping trade contractors run and grow their businesses. Today, I'm excited to welcome on Mike Oscar, the Director of Government Relations at the American Subcontractors Association. Mike is a fierce advocate for subcontractors. On today's episode, he's going to share some of the work he's been doing on Capitol Hill to ensure the interests of subcontractors and trade contractors are fairly represented. How are we doing today, Mark?
Thank you. Thanks very much, Ryan. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you and to your audience about the importance of the American Subcontractors Association to be involved in the government space, which is something that we take very seriously. I serve as their National Government Relations Director, and we have a lot of different priorities that we take one at a time. But just to give you a little bit of background, the American Subcontractors Association is a pivotal entity in the construction industry, representing over 3,500 subcontractors across the United States. And our legislative priority is our aim to address critical issues that impact subcontractors and, by extension, the broader construction sector, who play an essential role in construction projects.
Appreciate that intro and that description of your background and the work that the ASA is doing. So let's kick things off. Let's start big picture. What's at stake for subcontractors in 2025 as far as legislation is concerned?
It's a constant priority, and that is to ensure that our subs, that is our subcontractors members, are paid and they're paid on time. And so we are constantly monitoring that from a legislative and a regulatory perspective. More specifically, yesterday, the federal position regulatory, the FARs, came out with their new amended version of the FAR. This was something that the new administration said they were going to do. And we want to make sure that those recommendations, what they added, what they deleted, what they removed, still ensure that in all federal construction projects, we have insurances in place that we are paid on time. And if there are change orders, which is something that is ubiquitous throughout the construction industry, to ensure that those change orders are also promptly paid on time. And so that's on the regulatory side. From the legislative side, we're looking specifically at the legislation that was just reintroduced yesterday by Representative Pete Stauber. He's been a stalwart for us. Representative Stauber is from Minnesota. He also serves as our co-chair for the Construction Industry Procurement Caucus, which is one of the caucuses that is supported by the U.S. House of Representatives. And he reintroduced his Small Business and Payment Performance Act, which is legislation to ensure that if 50% of a change order is complete, 50% of that change order is paid out. Oftentimes in the contract process, the change order is not paid until the entire job is complete, which then means that our individual members have to carry the cost of that change order for quite an amount of time to ultimately wait to get paid. And that project they may have moved on to another project, but that project that they were working on at the time is still ongoing. And this could lead into multiple months, multiple years. And we want to ensure that there's efficiency in this whole payment chain of custody so that our members are paid and paid on time for the work that they have completed. Because oftentimes in contracts, change orders that occur, which again are, as I mentioned, ubiquitous throughout the construction industry and are very present in the construction industry, we're obligated through a unilateral change, which is in federal construction work. Oftentimes it's the federal government. And if we sign that contract, we're obligated to satisfy the requirements of any change to that contract and to that performance of work. And getting paid on time is very important. Also, at this time of year, Congress works on the National Defense Authorization Act. That is an annual bill that funds our Defense Department. Believe it or not, there are a lot of procurement clauses and measures in that legislation that will directly impact our members. Many of them do complete work on military bases. It is across the board in all the different armed services. But we're also trying to, at the same time in that legislation, ensure that if we are able to be effective there, it has a trickle-down effect, maybe at the state and local level, maybe not necessarily as military projects, but it will allow us to create precedent for our legislation moving forward that might be outside of the scope of the military, but also has a direct impact on public projects moving forward. So we're looking at that. We're looking at the impacts of bonding, public-private partnerships, looking at environmental impacts statements and studies that are all being under the purview of the National Defense Authorization Act. And we're looking at that as that bill's being crafted to ensure that our contractor members are protected. So again, we're looking at it both from the regulatory side and also at the legislative side. And that's happening right now in real time.
That's fantastic. I think those are a lot of like hot button issues. I know for our customers, which are mainly subcontractors, trade contractors, if you will. So especially change orders. I know the ASA is advocates for change order payment reform through the Small Business Payment for Performance Act. Is that similar to what you discussed at the beginning of your answer there, or is that a different
That's the
kind
same
of act that would help
legislation that
satisfy that?
Representative Stalber has offered numerous times, but we're taking it one step further because we have had this legislation. We originally drafted the
Okay.
legislation back in 2018. I understand that we're in 2025 and we're close to 7 years later, but legislation takes time. There's an education process. There's also changes in administrations. There's also changes in parties of control, who's minority and majority parties. Republicans now control all aspects of the Congress, as well as the executive office and even the Supreme Court. Again, that has its benefits and it also has its concerns as well. But we've been working with Representative Stalber because when he has offered that legislation as an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Bill, we have gotten thumbs down from the Defense Department. They see it as an additional cost because they're held to yearly budgets. And they also claim that it's going to come at a cost to upgrade their software to ensure that these payments are paid in a more timely basis. We don't necessarily buy into that argument, and we've opposed that argument. But the problem is when it doesn't matter what party you affiliate yourself with, when the Defense Department says they're not for something, you're not going to get a lot of support. So we've been working on a parallel track with Senator Joni Ernst from Iowa. Senator Ernst is the chairwoman of the Senate Small Business Committee, and she's taking this legislation, if you will, to a different level. She's looking at it from an unpriced change order as opposed to a regular change order, a price change order. And under an unpriced change order for projects that are $5 million or more or on a critical path. So think about, for example, if the government after 9/11, the terrorist attacks that occurred, there was a great sense of urgency to start the Homeland Security Department. That all is considered critical path because those projects need to be done on time. Now in real time, almost 20 years later, we're dealing with a new Space Force. This is very important to this current administration. We have contractors currently working on numerous bases throughout the country that are building these space forces, that building this new space program. That's very important to the administration. Those are considered critical path projects. So working with Senator Ernst, what we're trying to do is to say, okay, if the government already allows for $5 million and more on a critical path to get 50% of that change order paid out at 50% of the time, then why can't we then inverse that and say if it's 5 million or less, which would be really where our subcontractors live in the space. I'm not underestimating some of our subcontractors that do 5 million or more, but if I'm looking at majority of our members from a consensus standpoint are in that 5 million or less. And we've been working with her staff. She has a brilliant staffer who actually's worked with us. I've known her for quite a long time. She actually worked on the Armed Services Committee on the House, and now she's with Senator Ernst, again, as chair of the Small Business Committee on the Senate side. She's chief counsel for Senator Ernst, and she has convened with some of our subcontractors, which has been brilliant, in meetings with the Air Force. And the Air Force is agreeable, but let me put that in quotations. They are not opposed but they're not going to come out in affirmation whether they're for or against a bill. They're precluded to do that. But from a technical correction side, they're open to it. So we're working on that right now because I believe that on behalf of my members, that I want to get something done. I don't believe in supporting legislation just for the sake of supporting legislation. We have a government affairs committee. It's quite robust. It's over 90 plus members, but those members are made up of primarily subcontractors. So we have subcontractor members directly talking to us about what their needs and priorities are. We also have some supplier members on that committee, and we also have some of our attorneys that represent us in the construction law arena. And we've been working very closely to provide good input to Senator Ernst as she's drafting the bill. The bill's not complete yet, but I have a directive from that committee, and we meet 4 times a year. Beyond meeting 4 times a year, we communicate via email and phone, and I visit the state chapters quite often. I'm in contact with them on a regular basis, but they have instructed me that they want to take this a step further. I'll end with this on this legislation. We met with Senator Ernst when we had our fly-in on June 12th in Washington, D.C., and she felt that we're moving in the right direction. I continue to talk with her. Actually, her boss is having a big business expo coming up on August, believe it or not, August 12th, almost 2 months later. And she'll have the small business administrator coming in Ames, Iowa. And that's another opportunity for us to talk with her and talk with our subcontractors about the importance of this bill that she's drafting. So it'll be ready for prime time. But I don't want to diminish the work that Representative Stauber's doing on his bill, because that created the impetus to create this other version of the bill. And I know this is very deep in the weeds, and your audience probably may or may not be aware of it, but this is how this process works. And through the committee, through our co-chairs of the committee, through my board, and through just my conversations with our members, this is a very top priority. Change order reform is critical, and we want to ensure that not only that reform is present, but that it actually gets to what it's supposed to do, and that is to pay our members on a timely basis.
Excellent. No, I appreciate the detailed answer there, and I think our audience will as well. It's great to know that you guys are approaching this from a two-pronged point of view to get things done. So I want to move on to another topic. I know that tax reform is a big topic as well. So maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the issues that you're watching out for this year and how that might impact the ASA members.
Well, one thing I want to be clear about, the name of the bill that they came up with under the budget reconciliation process was the One Big Beautiful Bill. You may have heard about that in the news. Regardless of the name, the budget reconciliation process has been used for quite some time. Both sides of the aisles have used it. It's an opportunity to circumvent the filibuster in the Senate. All you need to do is to get to majority. So they worked on the bill on the House side, and they finished it up in the Senate by July 4th, which was the deadline the president put in place. Similarly, back in 2017, a budget reconciliation bill dealing with the tax provisions that this current bill dealt with was drafted and passed into law. The reason for the current One Big Beautiful Bill is because that bill that started in the first administration under the Trump administration in 2017 was going to sunset in 2025. They put a horizon, an 8-year horizon on that bill. So a lot of these tax breaks that were very important to my subcontractor members were going to sunset. And it would have created a tremendous burden if those tax deductions and credits and reform wasn't complete by 2025. And so that is what occurred. And it's a mammoth bill. I won't get into all of it. I will be very clear that we did not take a position. We were asked about taking a position. We actually were a part of a video that the White House put together specifically on the tax reform issues that our members, after their meeting with the White House, they were then, recorded in support of the tax reform provisions in that One Big Beautiful Bill. Because again, we are primarily small businesses. Some of us are family owned, generation after generation in the industry. So succession planning estate planning are very important. Also, too, the 199A deduction via the tax code for anyone who owns an LLC was important because that's a 20% deduction that you could use for capital improvements in your business. You could use it for administrative expenses. You could use it for a host of things. And to lose that deduction would have been quite catastrophic for our members, because a lot of us, beyond, if we're not established as an LLC, but we may have an LLC entity that is a part of the overall enterprise that the construction owner has, may have an LLC for his trucking company, may have an LLC for his warehousing. So that deduction was critically important, and that was maintained. And not only was it maintained, but there's no horizon on it. It's permanent for at that 20% level. I want to pause for a minute because I started out about the budget reconciliation process, but it's important. During the COVID crisis, Democrats were in control and they used budget reconciliation. So the pendulum swings on budget reconciliation back and forth. So it's not in my humble opinion, I don't see it as a partisan issue. I just see it as an attempt to allow for you to circumvent the filibuster. And having served as a Senate staffer for many years up on Capitol Hill, I'm an institutionalist when it comes to the preservation of the filibuster, because I think that allows for discussion, because you have to get over 50 votes. So right now it's 53-47. In order for something to pass, you have to get to 60 votes. You have to bring over 7 votes. Sometimes that stalls things and deliberately stalls things from moving forward. But what it really does, in my humble opinion, is it allows for conversations that otherwise you won't have. You don't have the filibuster rule in the House because majority party rules. So you don't have that opportunity to have that voice. So anyway, in the budget reconciliation process, you circumvent that. Getting back to the tax issues, the other thing that was quite important for us was that, again, estate tax relief, restoring 100% bonus depreciation, maintaining the Section 179 expensing, which allows for qualified capital investments, allowing contractors to choose how to expense and depreciate the capital investments, such as machinery and technology, to promote investment and innovation in their operation, extension of the clean energy hydrogen production tax credit. We have a lot of Section 45V clean hydrogen production tax credit. That would have been terminated. This has been now extended through 2028. That's important for a lot of different energy alternatives. And hydrogen is the new flavor of the week within the fossil fuel community. And a lot of our members are involved in that. When you look at the various crafts, from the electricians to the steam fitters, the pipe fitters, etc. So there's also tax deductions for auto loans for vehicles that are individuals that may have multiple vehicles on the construction site, that we now can allow for that deduction moving forward. And then all of your deductions, depending on if you're married, joint, or not married, single, child tax credit, that's important. And then one of the final pieces that was very important to us within the American Subcontractors Association is allowing for the 529 college savings plan. This is something that we worked on back in the first Trump administration, but this time we clarified it so that if you have a student or a family member that wants to go on to college, you have the college savings plan, the 529. But say, for example, you've saved that money and that student doesn't want to go on to college, but the student wants to go on to the trades. You'll now be able to use that funding to help support an apprenticeship program, to buy equipment, uniforms, to buy, also able to qualify your home care services. That was really a big part of Representative Norcross's push. Representative Norcross is from New Jersey. He's a Democrat, and he's an IBEW member. And he tells the story often that when he was working on the refineries and he was going through a divorce, if not for his parents to drop off his children at 4:30 in the morning to be on the job site by 6 a.m., because that's what was required, while he's going through his apprenticeship program, he didn't have any other alternative for daycare or childcare. Now, in the One Big Beautiful Bill, the 529 college savings plan can be used for the trades, can be used to reimburse equipment and uniforms, and allow for home care to be paid for. So those are some of the things that you might not hear about when you hear the name or title of One Big Beautiful Bill, but those tax provisions in that bill were critically important. And I'm certainly not an accountant by trade, but I had a lot of accountants and economists and attorneys that I work with that really combed through these provisions and made it clear to our members how important they were. So we supported those provisions. We're happy to see it there, and we look forward to reaping the benefits as we get prepared for the next year's tax season.
Awesome. Appreciate all that detail there because, yeah, you definitely don't hear about all those kind of individual items when you're hearing about these large acts or large bills and things like
Absolutely.
that. Mike, I know we're running a little bit short on time. I hope I can get one more question
Mhm.
in with you before we sign off. So I wanted to dig into workforce training. I know that is a big topic for the ASA. So
Yeah,
maybe you could
no,
talk a little
it's
bit
a
about the
top
things
priority.
you're working on as far as
Again, the
that's concerned.
construction industry is a very challenging but yet energizing industry to participate in. And we are looking at it from all different angles. We've always looked at it because labor is important. We can't complete the work without employees. We have the uniqueness of representing both union and non-union members. So apprenticeship programs are critical. This 529 that I just spoke of is one attempt for us to potentially help students that want to get into apprenticeship programs more engaged. We're also working with our various chapters. We have about 36 state chapters throughout the country. And I know that they're working very closely with their schools locally, both high school and junior college and on, to see if whether or not these students want to get involved in the trades. There's been a tremendous transformation for where people thought originally their children may end up. And the trades and the pendulum has swung, not to say there's anything against getting into the college level courses, but if you want to get into the trades, we've seen that transformation. Students are getting engaged. And these are highly skilled, require highly trained opportunities. So we're looking at that very closely. We're looking at funding to ensure that the Department of Labor has the employee training assistance program available to allow for these apprenticeship programs to move forward. We want to ensure that the curriculums are available and updated so that, again, we're giving those students that are in the apprenticeship program the opportunity to move forward. We're also looking at it potentially from an immigration perspective and to see how we could potentially work from apprenticeship to citizenship. Because again, we have a lot of individuals that would like to become United States citizens or already are United States citizens, but they have others that would like to get involved in the construction trades. So we're looking at it. There's no silver bullet to handle workforce development issues, but we're working very closely with our members in Congress. Again, I mentioned Representative Stolber, but we have a construction procurement caucus. There are numerous caucuses in the House and fewer in the Senate, but there are a few in the Senate. And we use those opportunities in those caucus meetings because they're not as formal as like an official hearing, but they do allow for us to have a vehicle, if you will, to have the conversation with the members of Congress to explain to them the importance of the construction industry and explain to them the importance of our workforce development. And then finally, I'll say that we also work we're part of the Construction Industry Procurement Coalition, along with the Construction Industry Safety Coalition. I'll take the Safety Coalition first because safety is of utmost concern for our workforce development. If I have an individual that wants to get into the construction industry, look, Washington right now is at 102 degrees. The humidity levels right now are above 95%. So it is very hot. And when you talk about heat and injury prevention standards that OSHA might come out with, we want to make sure that we're at the table. And that's one of the reasons why we're a part of the safety industry, construction safety industry coalition, because we want to ensure that if any administration, doesn't matter if it's Trump administration, Biden administration, if you're going to put rules and regs there, we want to have the practical experts that are on the ground explaining to them why it's important that we want to keep our employees safe. And we also want to ensure that whatever regulation comes down the pike, it's also cost effective for the employer, which we are. It's also cost effective for the developer or owner that we're working for. And more importantly, we want to make sure it's cost effective for the safety of our employees. So again, looking at workforce development from all angles, it's a continual challenge because, again, not everyone wants to get into the skilled trades, but the ones that do find it to be a very energizing opportunity. And I meet with them all the time, and we've done a lot. We've also have some students that come through our apprenticeship programs through registered apprenticeship that might want to go on and have opportunities to go on to receive their associate's degree in applied science, say in welding or in steam fitting. So the opportunities are endless, but the reality is this is a constant issue for us, and we're working on it on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. Thank you for joining us. To everyone who's listening or watching, thanks for tuning in. If you want to get involved with the ASA, you can go to asaonline.com to learn more about that. If you need help managing your projects and finances for your construction business, check out Notify at notify.com. We'll be back with another episode soon. Cheers.